Hey, Yona, it's really great to have you here today. How's it going? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, and thank you. So, about myself, I go by handle joohoi. I work at Visma I'm managing a red team, like internal red team at Visma. I'm a hacker, open sourcer, father, avid board gamer, brewer, and a make shit happener. Doing stuff.
That is amazing. And today we want to talk about, I guess, the most famous tool that you have created of yours. And before we continue, I need to ask you, is it FFUF or is it FFUF?
So it's FFUF, but I always pronounce it FFUF when discussing because
FFUF. All right.
Yeah.
There's another one. All right, let's go with FFUF for the sake of ease for this video. This is.
But if you listen to the intuitive way to pronounce it is FFUF, but it's FFUF, so it's FFUF actually.
FFUF with a strong F.
Yeah.
All right, as we're talking about this tool of yours, I want to start with what exactly is FFUF and what are people using it for?
So FFUF is a web fuzzer, where the term fuzzer actually is a bit fuzzy, pun intended. It is not a mutator per se, where mutator means it basically it does not mutate the data. So the traditional fuzzers basically they receive an example input, for example, for whatever application, for whatever kind of a user input, and it typically kind of mutates the input in kind of different ways. FFUF does not do that, but it takes like a pre-mutated input, which in many cases mean word lists. So basically lists of different inputs. One entry on one line is the typical use case for it. So FFUF can be used to manipulate any part of the HTTP request, and the kind of probably the most used feature for it is to kind of discover hidden content or hidden assets within a web server or endpoint in general. So hidden in this case means something that is not kind of or was not intended for public audience to see, but the way that the HTTP servers basically work is that you ask the HTTP server for a resource, and it responds that, hey, here's the content, or I don't have it. So what in this typical use case, what FFUF does is it tries like thousands or tens of thousands or millions of different kind of resources and tries to ask for them. And for those ones that the server has, it responds with, hey, okay, here it is. And FFUF is trying to distinguish between the responses where there is nothing returned to those where there are stuff returned. And it kind of does not show you all the results from these 10,000 different requests, but only the ones that differ in terms of content length or some other attribute. However, it can be used for like so many different things. You can search or try to change different parameters in the request or the post body, for example. You can try to search for like a server misconfigurations in terms of virtual hosts. There is not much that it kind of cannot do. The main idea behind the FFUF is to be kind of a extension of the hacker in a way, where it's like a Swiss Army knife style abstract tool that is just as good or just as bad as the hacker itself.
Right. I'm wondering though, like when you're saying it has this wide range of functionality, why did you, for yourself, create it in the first place? What was the original intention? Like, what did you have in mind?
So back at that point, I needed some couple of features that were not like readily available in the tools that I used. So I basically created it for my own use after getting frustrated within actually while doing a CTF, I believe, and I needed a functionality. So I looked around what is out there. Did not find what I was looking for, and decided that as a good open source community citizen, I will pick my favorite tool from the list and contribute to it. So I picked my favorite tool, gobuster at a time. Looked at the source code and figured out that, okay, here is the place where I should make the changes. Here is how I can have this feature I'm needing. And then I looked at the GitHub repository, and I noticed that they had a huge pull request open that was basically touching all the code. They had a kind of full refactoring of the whole code base basically going on. And so I asked them, because when you contribute to an open source project, the way that the version handling works, that if there are two parties kind of changing the same parts of the code or same lines of the code, it creates something called merge conflicts when trying to kind of put it all together. And it's a lot of work for the maintainer to kind of make that happen and kind of merge all of that into the source code branch. So I asked if they want me to base these changes I'm making, if they want me to base them on the kind of the old version, or if I should pick the huge kind of refactoring version as a base. So unfortunately, at that point, or kind of, or fortunately, like whatever timeline you want to pick, or they answered that unfortunately, sorry, dude, but we are really overwhelmed with all of this refactoring work at the moment. So please do not submit at this time.
It's all sad.
So I went out and wrote my own tool instead to have that functionality.
Right. Yeah. Let's speak about tool creation a little bit, and FFUF in specific. Right. I wanna know from you, like, what language is it written in, and why did you end up picking that one?
So it's written in Go. I was learning Go at the time, and the kind of the good reasons for running Go are basically it has a really awesome concurrency model, which means that it's easy to build applications that run like a parallel jobs. Like in FFUF, the thing is like doing multiple HTTP requests side by side at the same time, without waiting for the response from the first one before starting the second one, which directly converts to speed, basically. Mm-hmm. And the other kind of thing I fell in love with Go was the kind of easy way to build binaries, because the binaries that are built with Go have like 0 dependencies. They are statically linked, so you don't need to have this and that library on your machine for it to work, which also was a bit cumbersome in some of the tools available at the time, and still. So no dependencies and fast concurrency, and easy to do something called cross compiling. So on my Linux machine, when I write the code and make a release, on my Linux machine, I can build the Windows binary, I can build the Linux binary, and I can build OpenBSD binary if I want. Right. FreeBSD stuff, like everything, and stuff is fast. One additional point, maybe, me coming from Python world, in a way, like many of us, Python is really dominant in like especially the offensive stuff. So the like writing Go and kind of running the kind of changes that you made running the current version of the source code is so it's almost instant. So it feels like you're actually working with the scripted language. So you kind of don't see the compile times. So it feels like a really kind of natural for me.
Did you run into any issues though during tool creations? I'm thinking like you at line 0 to all the way what it is right now. Did you have any major issues, or was it always a smooth process?
It's kind of well. There are no like a huge hurdles anywhere because it's kind of iterative process. So you're adding a small thing here, small thing there. Maybe the hardest thing is actually the communication with the FFUF users who kind of they haven't stared at the source code. They haven't worked on the source code, so they don't kind of have the same vision than I do with with what FFUF is and what it should be. So as I said before, I try to kind of create a kind of Swiss Army knife style abstract tool that can do a lot of things, or most of the things that you could do with the HTTP requests, basically. But that kind of comes with the cost. So when you try to create kind of specific functionality, something like a really specific, something that the tool does, like does magic behind the scenes. That usually means that the code kind of becomes really complicated, and it kind of ties you. When you do a specialized functionality for one thing, you kind of tie your hands for something else because there is this magic happening behind the scenes that is not visible for the users, and it kind of can confuse some as well, as they suddenly something else is happening for their HTTP request that FFUF sends forward, instead of having full control over the data. So this is probably the most difficult thing is trying to explain why I don't want to have this feature that is really cool and would be really beneficial for this specific use case. So I basically the guideline I think I have had there is that kind of following the Unix philosophy in a way. If there's something that can be done outside of FFUF in a convenient way, let's say a good example of this is creating a sequence. So kind of as FFUF uses word lists. In this case, a sequence of numbers, for example, could be every number between 1 and 100, for example, and FFUF sends all these requests with this payload. So I don't want to have that feature in FFUF because it's easily done outside of FFUF, right? With a tool called sec for GNU systems, for example. You can pipe it directly to FFUF, so you still have one command, basically. So I don't want to complicate the code base and have more stuff to maintain because it's easy to handle outside of FFUF. So it kind of comes with the price of expecting the users to be experts in kind of other areas like Unix commands in this case.
Yeah, but you would expect it, I guess, anyway, with people who are hackers or who are trying to use the tool. So
that's true.
I guess that's
true. Yeah, that's true. I that's kind of my judgment as well. However, there are a lot of kind of use cases where people want to use FFUF for automation. It can be used for Dust automation, for example. And they kind of follow these kind of different hints or different tutorials or things like that, and don't really understand everything that goes on with the HTTP request, for example, or don't understand everything that goes on with Linux. So I kind of I agree and disagree. So I do expect the users to be kind of experts, but it kind of does have user base outside of the expertise area as well.
No, I get that. Has there ever been a point during the creation process where you weren't really like, where you were lacking motivation and where you didn't want to continue anymore? And also, how many hours, if you have an estimation, do you think you have already put into FFUF?
Oh wow. Yes. So when it comes to the motivation, yes, there have been points where I have so many things in my private life and work life that I need to do that I
Right.
kind of just don't find either don't find the time to jump into it, or there are some cases where there are things that are hard to solve. Kind of they don't have a good a resolution or a good way forward, so it kind of discourages you.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of tend to kind of avoid doing it in a way. So that stuff, I never had a serious enough doubts that I would like to stop doing it in any way. But I have been like soft forced into taking breaks though.
Right.
One of the breaks is actually quite recently. So FFUF has not seen as many releases during the last let's say 6 months than previously, because we bought a new house, had moved to it, had all of this COVID thing going on. And with a family which has 3 kids,
it's understandable. It's understandable. But how many hours do you think you have put into the tool already? Do you have an estimation, or how many days? I don't know.
I would say probably it's really hard to estimate, but I would thousands.
I get that. Thousands? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you receive a lot of pull requests though by collaborators? Is that helping you with developing it?
That's kind of both. It's helping and it's not helping. So it's helping with the kind of with the actual creation of the new features, which this is awesome. There are really good quality pull requests coming in, and the tool has a lot of community contributions as well.
Okay.
But because the kind of the mentality that I kind of come back to again, which is to kind of trying to keep the code base in a certain way in order to be able to maintain it, so it doesn't become this kind of a scrap yard of different functionalities, different coding styles, different ways to implement stuff that basically becomes impossible to maintain. So because of the longevity, I have kind of certain ways that I want the code to function. So it does create some kind of issues, especially with some larger pull requests where the reviewing of I do a pretty stringent code reviews for all of the pull requests that come in. So they can be cumbersome in some cases, and it may take a long time to kind of do this back and forth. But I believe at the same time, the code review is probably the best tool for learning for both for both me and the contributor. So it's a really good type of communication in many ways, but at the same time it can be really time consuming. But so I take it back. So it is not both a positive and negative. It's it's overwhelmingly positive thing, but it takes time.
Yeah, I get it. It's not just black and white, but there's things to both sides of a pull request. Let's talk a little bit about tool story time. I want to hear some stories. Is there any special use case or functionality that you want to tell me and the audience tuning in about that maybe most people don't even know? Like maybe something nifty that nobody's using.
Okay, so maybe the feature the FFUF basically has 2 kind of main line uses for it. One of them is within this huge automation machinery where you kind of use a code to read the results, and the other one is the more manual way where you actually stare at the screen and use it. And I think the thing that I personally find most useful is the functionality to replay the results into burp.
Okay.
And kind of combining that with some like command line magic, it makes it really feasible. So if you don't have a super strong connection at home or where you may be sitting, you many of the FFUF users tend to run FFUF on a virtual machine somewhere in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So the command line magic that I'm talking about would be kind of doing a reverse port forwarding, which basically means that you have your burp running on your local laptop here, and you create while you connect to the virtual machine, within that same connection you create this port forwarding using SSH, where you expose your burp proxy port to the virtual machine.
Okay.
So on the virtual machine, where while you're running burp, while you're running FFUF, you use the replay proxy functionality, which works in a way that when it finds something, finds a match, the FFUF prints it on the screen. But when the replay proxy is defined, it will resend that request through the defined proxy URL, which in this case would be the reverse port forward to your local machine burp.
Right. So and then you automatically have it in, and then you can use it with repeater to keep manipulating it and all that.
Exactly. That's kind of my favorite workflow, to use FFUF to pull stuff and continue on repeater.
I've not done that before, so that's definitely a new one for me, and I'm pretty sure also for all our listeners. I'm wondering, do you have any funny stories if it comes to FFUF? What is the funniest story that happened to you maybe because of creating that tool?
Well, sitting here, for example. So I just I'm really kind of baffled how a large adoption the tool has gotten. So apparently I have done something right there.
You did.
So that's really cool. I don't think there are so many small cool things and really these small cool memories that I have. I think one kind of cool story about the cool story that also has a kind of connection to how I believe that FFUF gained popularity. So there is this hacker camp in Europe that happens every 4 years called CCC camp, or Chaos Communication camp. So it's a huge a hacker event. Right. I really encourage everybody to join. It's super fun and so on and so forth. So on Twitter, there is this Australian hacker called Nafi, who was really early adopter of FFUF, and he at the time was doing a lot of bug bounties and was reaping a huge bounties out there. So he had a pretty strong Twitter following because he was pretty vocal of what he was doing, right. Kind of sharing the knowledge and such. And he started out of the blue, just basically promoting FFUF. So the story kind of goes there and to the Germany, where I was about to go to the CCC camp, and I saw a tweet from Nafi that, hey, is anyone in Berlin right now for some lunch and beer maybe?
So you guys met actually.
Yeah, so I was still waiting for my lift to the camp. So I was let's meet up and have a lunch and a beer. So we ended up sitting on this kind of this small like street side kind of small, like a really small shop or kiosk or something like that,
right?
With a decent, as we were in Germany, a decent beer selection. So we sat there for a couple of hours and like ended up talking about like mostly stuff not related to computers at all, like and had like a super awesome time there.
So you ended up having more than one beer, I guess.
Oh, absolutely, and more than those in the camp later on in the following days as well. But that was one of the kind of I think like a really cool things. Because like I appreciate the guy really, really much, and I believe that he has been probably the biggest influence in FFUF getting like
right.
as big as it is today.
That's pretty cool how a tool can bring together people. Like you wouldn't think of that while you write your first line of code, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely. But it's also about the personalities. It's like I'm pretty social myself.
Right,
and I kind of like to jump into these like these different like IRL or kind of digital social interactions. So exactly. it's about the personality as well. Yeah.
Let's talk about the future of FFUF a little bit. What is coming up for FFUF? Anything exciting or interesting you want to share right now?
So yeah, I'm working on like multiple different things right now. So the cool stuff that just happened like recently, like during the last week or so, I merged a couple of community pull requests that were like a really good and really good cool. Helping especially in the kind of I see kind of, as I told before, I have this it has two kind of mainline usages. One of it is which is the automation. One of them is the kind of manual stuff.
Right.
So right now I kind of see in the retrospective that right now I seem to be focusing more on the automation side of things. So the cool stuff that basically just came in as community pull requests were that really affect this type of functionalities are the sniper mode. So here in the naming, like people who use burp know what sniper mode
exactly.
is.
I was just about to ask where you got the name from.
Yeah, so it kind of while the FFUF does some of the functionalities than burp does, it kind of shows how what kind of stable the burp suit itself is in this kind of in this line of work. Because everybody knows, like, I don't even know another word or another way to describe that exact functionality.
Yeah,
that is just, they have created the kind of baseline name for it. Anyway, the sniper mode is there. And another thing that is like really beneficial is a standard output format that is the format's name is something called JSON lines. Which means that every result itself is a complete JSON object. So you basically have a JSON object on a line where you can iteratively read the standard output and kind of have immediate, let's say, notifications. You want to push Slack notifications, Mattermost notifications, something like that, for when something is found, instead of waiting for the tool to run completely and reading the output JSON object, for example. This also helps because when we're talking about the output formats like XML or JSON that are structured, if let's say you have this huge automation run with FFUF that has like millions of matches, in order to create that file programmatically, like an output JSON file or output XML file, the FFUF needs to have all of that, all of the results in its memory. And while creating the file, it actually doubles because it needs to have the file in the buffer as well. So in order to create that structure, because if you are like outputting XML or JSON, you cannot kind of do it line by line because it's structured. It has the kind of beginning tag and the end tag and yeah. So that's really cool. People can use that in automation. Going forward, there are. I'm currently personally working on the auto calibration revamp, which does it makes it really easy for targeting like a multiple different endpoints. So one of the biggest issues in FFUF is the effects for the server and the kind of endpoints that are targeted. So another kind of fun story regarding FFUF from the bug bounty program perspective was that I received a message where I was told that a certain bug bounty program's resource usage was increased, I believe, like 700% or something like that, with a single kind of FFUF job against it. So the effects can be pretty devastating, especially if you're running a kind of a large bug bounty program where there are like hundreds of hackers at the same time running FFUF with thousands of requests towards the endpoint. So now I lost my thought, but that was the story. So anyway, coming to the automation part that I'm working on, the auto calibration that allows you to basically have multiple different targets. So you can spread, instead of doing so let's say you have 100 different servers or services that you need to test. Traditionally, you would go test the first one, test the second one, test the third one, send 1,000 requests to the first one, then the second one, and so on and so forth. The auto calibration functionality, because all of the servers basically respond in a different way. So in order to filter out the false positives, you need to do either manual calibration or auto calibration that is offered by FFUF, where it kind of sends random requests and tries to kind of identify similarities with these responses to random requests that most likely do not exist. So the auto calibration functionality that I'm currently working on is doing that stuff host based. So you can target these 100 different targets like horizontally. So instead of sending 1,000 requests to one, then to second, and then the third, you can send one request to each of them, and then kind of move around and do the second input request to all of them, which results into kind of much better user experience for the server operators, because they, instead of seeing 1,000 requests coming in a couple of seconds, they just see a kind of a single request every 10 seconds or so, which really does not register.
I mean, you mentioned Bug Bunny before, but I really appreciate that feature from a Bug Bunny perspective, because as you were saying, usually some Bug Bunny programs even have a request limit, and that is going to help with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to touch one more topic before we're going to wrap up, and that is supporting you. Obviously, you were saying creating a tool like that is appreciated by the community takes a lot of work. You've invested a lot of hours, but obviously you have a life next to your life as a tool creator. So how can somebody support you who enjoys using your tool, who maybe even has found a vulnerability with it, gotten a bounty with it? How can we support you?
So there are a couple of different ways to support open source projects in general. One of them is contributing code, and the better you make the contribution, the code itself, it makes it so much easier for me to review and merge it. The other thing that is like a really that I appreciate a lot is contributing into the documentation, or creating tutorials, things like that, for people to discover how to use this.
Speaking of tutorials, I quickly gotta jump in here. I'm going to link a tutorial that Intigriti has produced on FFUF. But
awesome.
I'll give it back to you now.
Yeah. So there are a couple of like really good tutorials out there, and also there is this training ground that was made by Adam Langley. So these are kind of the documentation, code contributions are the kind of traditional ways to support open source projects. But especially if in case you're a kind of commercial user of FFUF, like making money using it, it's like in my kind of view, it's kind of fair to contribute some small portion of that back.
Absolutely.
So there is a possibility to do that using GitHub sponsors. So there is a functionality in GitHub to offer monetary support for the maintainer of any open source project that has that option active. Like a kind of the other projects that kind of really deserve the money are there. There is a ton of those, and nobody can support all of them. So,
right.
But it's like it does huge it does have a huge impact on the motivation part.
We will link obviously your GitHub repository in the description. So if you want to support, go ahead, click here, and then if you're at the GitHub page, you will find the donation link, right, with GitHub sponsors. And speaking about that, Intigriti as a company, we are not really using your tool to hack by ourselves, but our community is really appreciating your tool. And we have more than 40,000 hackers who are using and might be using FFUF. And because of that, we want to donate a good amount to you via that very same link. Just want to break that to you right now.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Like, as I said, the kind of receiving an email from GitHub that you have a new sponsor.
Feels
even
good.
if it's it feels really good. Like it does have like putting your money where your mouth is, basically. So it
Exactly.
kind of really kind of shows a real appreciation towards the work that has gone into FFUF.
Absolutely. All right, let's wrap this up. Final question to you: do you have any shoutouts? Something you have in your heart that you want to share with our community? Is there something, you want to give away?
A huge shout out to anyone sharing knowledge in terms of open source tools, or like doing YouTube videos, streams, whatever. There is like too many people to mention. And like I believe everybody can contribute. There's a huge amount of write-ups. There's in different medias, different blogs, Twitters. Like you can fit a lot of knowledge, as shown by Nafi. You can fit a lot of knowledge in 140 characters. There's like Intigriti is doing like a really good job in knowledge sharing, like a huge amount of different resources for tools and tips and whatever. And also the when it comes to the bug bounty, even the bug bounty programs can contribute by showing the results or sharing how it looks from the program side and what they appreciate the hackers doing and right. So, things like that. So shout out to everybody sharing.
All right, I'll take that. Thank you so much for taking your time today, Joona. And it was great talking to you.
Yep, thank you. Likewise.